What's up, everybody? I am your host, a killer who wears a heavy winter coat in June, and that is my co-host, a Wish.com version of Stu Mocker. And welcome to the Grindhouse Syndicate, where today we are talking about a nostalgic 90s slasher. And it is very dear to my heart. Jamie Blank's urban legend from 1998. My aunt actually took me to see this in theaters back in the day, and I loved it. I personally think that this movie does not get enough love. The theme is great. It uses that Scream style really well. It has a pretty good killer reveal, and it's got some fucking awesome cameos in it.
Does have a lot of good cameos. There's some horror icons in this movie. Thought the cast of this movie's great.
Yeah, I mean we got Danielle Harris in this, which by the way, she tried out for the lead role and ended up getting this roommate role instead, but I would have liked to have seen her in the lead role.
Yeah, that's definitely 100%. Not only because Danielle Harris is awesome, but I actually thought the final girl in this was kind of weak. I feel like Danielle Harris could have definitely killed the role.
Yeah, and she looks phenomenal as a goth chick.
I would literally watch like a fly on the wall if Danielle Harris was in it. So having her as the lead, definitely. I would watch a fly on a wall probably multiple times if it had Danielle Harris as a goth girl.
Yeah,
so
she's gorgeous. Then we have like the legend himself, Brad Dourif, and fucking Robert Englund, who plays a whole ass character in this movie. He doesn't even have a cameo. He's in the movie.
He is Professor Freddy.
Yeah. Yeah, 90s slashers are one of my all-time favorite subgenres. 100% a guilty pleasure. You have, like, back then you had, like, the Scream movies. You have I Know What You Did Last Summer movies. Bride of Chucky came out around this time. Cherry Falls, Popcorn, Valentine, which Jamie Blanks actually also did Valentine. And yes, that movie sucks, but I'll still watch it.
A lot of bangers around this time.
Yeah.
Definitely.
A lot of them are just copying Scream, but I mean, Scream is really good. I don't hate on that. I don't blame them.
I definitely think that this movie definitely took some things from Scream.
Some things.
Yeah, I'm not going to say, being inspired by something is one thing, but after watching this, I kind of have a little stronger of an opinion about that. I think they didn't just take the ideas sometimes. It's like they told certain actors to just play like a character from Scream. It's like they showed them a scene and was like, play this. And it happens multiple times in this movie. The whole idea of urban legends, which I have always, because it's been a long time since I watched this movie.
It's only been a year for me. I watched it recently.
It's been a really long time, and I've always thought, the idea of killing people with urban legends is a really original idea. But now, kind of watching it now, it seems like they were trying to copy the horror movie tropes that Scream used as a part of its kills, and it's a big part of the movie. And they were like, well, we can't use horror movie tropes, so we'll use urban legend tropes. And I feel like it was a direct ripoff. The whole premise of the kills was a direct ripoff of Scream. And it's not like Friday the 13th, Sean Cunningham said they were trying to capitalize on the whole success of Halloween, and they were like, we need a holiday. What's a good holiday theme? And they came up with Friday the 13th, and they admit that the title was completely stole, but the movie was completely different. Whereas this movie, if you're inspired by something or you're trying to capitalize one thing, but some of the characters are just like I said, direct ripoffs.
Yeah, I got a little something about that in the very end. We'll touch on this again. But yeah, if you listen to us on Spotify, you can now comment on our episodes. and we can comment back, which is a brand new feature from Spotify. Before, there was like a little questionnaire thing at the end, which I think it was like, how did you like this episode? Some of you guys would comment on there. I always hated the fact that I could never comment back to you guys. Now you can. So that's all set up. And we also just did our fresh meat review on Long Legs. So if you haven't listened to that yet, check that out after this episode.
Man, speaking of the horror cameos, we get Paul Allen playing Reporter Paul.
And we get another crazy coincidence because we went and seen Long Legs the first night it came out. And there's an actress in that is the final girl in this. So, and we had no idea about that when we went and seen it and or picked this movie to do this week. So we got another kind of weird coincidence.
It's all connected.
It's
all
big
intertwined.
Circle of horror life.
It is.
Yeah.
But first, if you want to stay up to date on what is going on with us or the show, talk about or submit your movie requests, or just say hey, you can always find us at one of our social media accounts or our official website at Grindhouse.Horror.Pod.com, Facebook at the Grindhouse Syndicate Horror Podcast, Instagram at Grindhouse.Syndicate.Horror.Pod, and many more, which you can find links for in the show notes as always. And please subscribe or follow for alerts on new episodes.
And if you really love us and don't want us to have to become college campus security guards, give us a review.
Please God, I don't want to be a security guard at a college campus.
Yeah, I couldn't deal with those shithead kids.
The fucking fraternity people, man. The frat bros and the frat parties. Yeah, fuck all that.
Urban Legend is a 1998 slasher film directed by Jamie Blanks, written by Silvio Horta, and starring Jared Leto, Alicia Witt, Rebecca Gayheart, Tara Reid, and Michael Rosenbaum. It is the first installment in the Urban Legend film series. Its plot focuses on a series of murders on the campus of a private New England university, all of which appear to be all of which appear to be modeled after popular urban legends.
It's late. We can't talk. I done fucked up and said turd. You done said molded.
We had to go to the movies late last night. Then we had to record that movie last night. Then we had to finish writing this episode. And now we're recording this episode. It's a long weekend. But it was filmed in Toronto in the spring of 1998. Urban Legends was released in the United States on September 25th of 1998. It was a commercial success, grossing $72.5 million worldwide on a budget of $14 million.
I guess it did kind of grow. That money grew.
It grew.
You should have stuck with it.
It received genuinely negative reviews from critics, with the chief criticisms being that the film was a blatant ripoff of Scream.
Oh, big surprise. A little bit of I Know What You Did Last Summer in there, too.
The film has been credited by both cinema and folklore scholars as being one of the first major films to fuck, dude. It was the first one to talk about urban legends. There. Fuck the complicated words. The concept for the film was developed by Silvio Horta, a recent film school graduate from New York University. Horta pitched the idea in late 1997 to Gina Matthews, a producer who was leading writers' workshops at the time.
Wait, 97, huh?
Yep.
It's
a long time ago now.
Yeah, I know. Just happened to be right after 96.
Scream 2.
The Scream craze.
Scream 2, just came out.
Scream 2, which also takes place at college.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, there's multiple people in this movie that was in Scream 2.
Yeah.
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 There was almost 3, and I'll tell you about the other one later.
You know, I love the feel in the 90s, the teen slasher. You know, those movies obviously hold a special place in our heart because we were growing up watching those. But man, and that's kind of how I remembered this movie. But some of the stuff is just too blatant. And I actually looked after I watched it at kind of what some people were saying about that. And there's a lot of fans of this movie who will literally argue that it wasn't a ripoff.
Oh,
like,
they're gonna
and
die
I'm
on
like,
that hill.
yes. And I'm like, if you just say, hey, it was a ripoff, but I love it. I can give you that.
That's me.
But for you to be like, it's not a ripoff. Like, there was people on there legitimately, not a shit ton of them, but I've seen a couple people trying to argue how this wasn't a ripoff. Somebody said, this isn't a ripoff at all. This is more closely like a love story to 70s slashers. And I'm like, what?
I thought you were gonna tell me it's a more closer Scream to Scream.
No. I'm fucking up my words.
It's not a rip-off. It's more closer to Scream than Scream itself.
No, but they said like 70s slashers and 70s horror, and I'm like, now I don't know what movie you watch. You watched different movie.
Do you want to know how I know they're wrong?
Because it came out in the late 90s.
Because I have the Scream Factory version, and I watched all the behind-the-scenes materials. And they have a fuck ton of interviews with the people who wrote the movie, made the movie, filmed the movie, was in the movie, all of it. And literally, it starts out with the Scream logo. And it says this movie in 1996, Scream came out and changed everything. And we literally was like, we got to capitalize on that.
Did they just, instead of using like their own behind the scenes, they just
Scream.
They just put the behind the scenes making of Scream. That's why they got. This is why they got actors from Scream 2. They're like, all right, tell us what they're doing. Tell us what they're doing over there. We need to know.
They tried to get Matthew Lillard to play Parker.
No, yeah, I guess he would have probably been closer to Parker. I would have watched a movie with Matthew Lillard as
Let's do again.
Journalist Paul.
So Matthew liked the story, and the two began pitching the screenplay to numerous film studios. In seeking a director, executive producer Brad Luff scouted potential filmmakers from Australia. I don't know why he was so dead set on it being from an Australian director, but he was.
Well, if he did that now, it'd be a good time, because Australia's putting out some bangers in horror.
Australia, I'm getting like a ton of like videos from like the TikToks and the like Facebook Reels and stuff. I'm getting a ton of them from Australia.
Kangaroos.
I don't know why, but I'm for it.
Oh, I thought that was going to be related to horror.
No, I don't know why all of a sudden they're like, hey, here's some Australian.
Maybe they just
content.
discovered TikTok
cool
over there.
But where was I at? Oh yeah, so they were looking for a director from Australia, and they were really impressed by 26-year-old Jamie Blank's short horror film, Silent Number. Blanks had initially wanted to direct producer Mort's I Know What You Did Last Summer from 1997. It's kind of another Scream ripoff. And went so far as directing a mock trailer for the project, but Jim Gillespie had already been hired to direct that. So instead, Blanks was offered the screenplay to Urban Legend and signed on as director in February of 1998. Principal photography began on April 20th of 1998 at the University of Toronto. The opening sequence was among the first to be filmed. It was shot on location at a gas station outside of Toronto, and to achieve the effect of the storm, artificial rain machines were used. Throughout the shoot, Blank sought to keep on-screen violence muted or implied rather than show in explicit detail. Several moments of violence written into the script were not filmed. Among them was a shot of Michelle's severed head rolling onto the road after her death.
Yeah. That's a really, really nice way to say we're saving on budget money.
They had a pretty big budget.
It'll be really artsy. We'll just not show the actual stuff. Like, we'll just not show. We'll not even film it. How about that?
We'll just whisper in your ear that it happened.
Yeah, so Sasha's kill in this is, which I thought it was really weird when I seen it. We don't even get a drop of blood.
Yeah.
Like, she is literally axed to death, right? Like underneath
where we can't see.
Yeah, where we can't see, but there's not even a drop of blood. And I almost thought that was gonna play into the end somehow, because I didn't remember who the killer was in this. I knew it was one of the girls. I knew it was one of the girls, but I didn't remember exactly who it was. And I was like, okay, that's interesting.
So Urban Legend was followed by 2 sequels, Urban Legend's Final Cut, which was released theatrically in 2000, and the direct-to-video film Urban Legend's Bloody Mary in 2005. In February of 2020, a reboot of the film was announced to be in development, but it was later canceled due to COVID-19 and the studio losing interest. So the ratings for this is Rotten Tomatoes give it a low 28%. IMDb gave it a 5.6 out of 10. Letterboxd is a 2.8 out of 5. But the Google average audience rating on this movie is a 4.1 out of 5. So kind of your average people really like it.
Well, I have a feeling that's a lot of the people who are going and specifically watching this movie because they remember it and they liked it. Which is probably not a lot of not like a new movie that comes out and people are. If that was from '98, I would think more of that. I think that if you like those Scream-like movies, especially for us that grew up around that time, you're probably gonna like it more than what the average person was. But if you didn't come up in that time and you're watching this movie for the first time, especially if you know the movie Scream, you're probably
the movie it totally didn't rip off of.
Yeah. You're probably not going to take a whole lot from it.
If you would like to watch this movie, you can currently find it streaming on Max. All right, so you ready to dive into the plot of Urban Legend?
Yes, this, we've wanted to cover Scream. We've talked about it. This is kind of a prep.
Yeah. So we start out on a dark and stormy night where we see a young college-age girl named Michelle Mancini. Does that name sound familiar?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, they purposely picked that last name.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. But yeah, she's driving back to college, and after a few minutes of having to listen to her very terrible singing voice, we see that she is running out of gas. But luckily for her, she spots an old rundown gas station pretty much in the middle of nowhere. And by this point, it's pouring down rain.
And gas was only $1.14 a gallon.
Really, I didn't see that.
You didn't catch that?
No, I didn't even look at that.
What, $1.14?
Yeah, I didn't look at the gas sign. I didn't even think about that. But yeah,
that's crazy because it's huge. It's a big ass gas sign.
Yeah,
make it very, very noticeable. But man, it'd be nice to have gas like that again.
So she pulls up to the station and beeps her own horn because I guess she's too good to pump her own damn gas. And this kind of run-down looking gas station worker comes out, who is played by the horror legend Brad Dourif, who, if you didn't know, has been in many things, but he is most famous for voicing Chucky. So, by the way, there was a behind the scenes of him, because there's I told you, there's a lot of behind the scenes, just handheld video that they shot, just hanging out. And he does the Ode Dewey Dimbella.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it's always... That's always good. I remember hearing it earlier through the TV, and I was like, "What is he watching?" Was it on the special features or something?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So she tells him to fill it up and passes him a credit card through the window. And as he is pumping gas, he looks in the car and suddenly becomes concerned. She most definitely, in my opinion, deserves to be the opening kill here because this man has gotten soaked pumping her fucking gas. He has been very polite, and because he has this speaking disability, she calls him a fucking freak show.
Yeah, she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Between her bitchiness and then her terrible singing, I would have axed her too if I was in the back seat. Yeah, maybe he wasn't gonna axe her. Maybe he's just trying to get a free ride. He's like, I can't take it.
So anyway, Brad Dourif runs back into the gas station, and after a moment, he runs back out and informs cuntbag Michelle that she needs to come inside because the credit card company is on the phone. She's thinking this guy wants to kidnap or kill her, I guess, and she eventually just agrees to go in. Once inside, we see the attendant lock the doors as Michelle picks up the phone on the desk, but she quickly becomes alarmed when there is nobody on the other end of the line. The attendant tries to say something to her, but he has a very bad stutter, and she just freaks out, runs past him, and she quickly discovers that the door is locked. He runs up behind her and gives it another go, but he just can't get the words out in time before she pulls out a fucking can of mace and sprays his face with it. He falls to the floor screaming in pain while she breaks the window and escapes. She then runs to her car with the attendant running behind her. She gets it started and hits the gas, running over a national treasure, a true man among men, Brad Dourif.
It's a fucking shame.
Yeah. But he lived. He lived to do more Chuckies.
He lived so he could get arrested for her murder.
Oh, yeah. As she fishtails it out of the parking lot, we see the attendant stand up and yell, "There's someone in the back seat." I really liked. I've always loved this opening because it's a misdirect, and it's a really good misdirect, I think.
Yeah, I think the opening is fantastic. Give it 10 out of 10. They 100% make you think it's him, and it turns out it's obviously not. If I was him, I would have just been like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yep.
After she
Yeah.
sprayed me with the mace, I'd have been like, and broke my window with a plastic fucking phone. However she threw that through the glass window.
Them old songs were heavy though.
I would have been like, you know what? Fuck it.
So a few months, God damn. I gotta regroup here. A few moments later, we see Michelle frantically driving down a dark, wet road, and as the lightning strikes light up the night, we catch a glimpse of someone wielding an axe behind her. We see the axe move into position, and right as Michelle notices the killer behind her, her head is brutally removed from her body. And we didn't get to see it because of the director. So thanks a lot.
We didn't. We got to see a driver's side window get absolutely just destroyed by an axe.
It's okay to have violence against glass,
Yes.
but not violence against people.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to see a head break, not a glass break. I will say I love for this kill. This is honestly, despite us not getting to see it, we don't get to see really any of the kills. It's one of my favorite because after he yells, there's somebody in the back seat. They have these lightning strikes, and they really build the suspense. Like you're looking in the flashes of lightning for somebody to be in the back seat, and they hold off for just a second. It's like 4 or 5 lightning strikes before you see the person rise up. I thought the build up and the pacing for that kill was fantastic.
I would agree. So we then jump to the setting of our story here, Pendleton University. And we then meet our main cast of characters. We have Natalie, who is the final girl. Brenda, her best friend. Sasha, her other really good friend, who is also the sex-crazed college radio DJ. Sasha's boyfriend, Parker, aka our Wish.com Stu Mocker. And last but not least, Paul, who is the college paper journalist and Brenda's big crush. So they are sitting around having coffee, and Parker begins telling them the story of the Stanley Hall massacre, where 25 years ago, a professor walked in and murdered everyone with a hunting knife after going crazy, then killing himself. Paul chimes in, informing everyone that it's just an urban legend that floats around on every college campus in the Northeast. Natalie agrees and asks for the proof, and Parker tells her that the college covered it up. So Natalie heads back to her dorm room, and when she walks in, she flips on the light, and we see that her goth roommate, played by the gorgeous Danielle Harris, is getting smashed from behind by this wet noodle of a man.
By the luckiest man alive.
So I paused it because I was like, I've never realized what the guy looks like. I always look at Danielle Harris, but I paused it, and the look on his face, like, so her look on her face is she's mad. The look on his face is like, oh God, we just got caught fucking. Like he's just one of those guys, man. I don't even think he's really goth. He doesn't look like he hates the establishment.
No.
He doesn't chain smoke.
Well, as this movie goes on, they do a really good job of showing what society in Hollywood thought of gothic
goths.
People in 1998. Because they make her character awful.
Yeah.
Like she's just like so mad at the world all the time. Like she's just a rotten person. And it's like, wow, this is what they portrayed goth people to be like in 1998.
It's like anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. This roommate's name is Tosh, and she's always very angry for some reason. But she gets pissed at Natalie for turning on the light and kind of freaks out. Natalie turns it back off, puts her headphones on, and goes to bed. And this becomes really important later on. It's kind of the Chekhov's gun kind of thing here.
Yeah, I would have just waited for them to quit having sex.
Well, you would have left?
Yes, I wouldn't have went in there and got in bed with them, like,
depends on how tired I was.
Loudly fucking next to me. Like, you know, if I was in bed sleeping, they started fucking, and I just woke up, that's one thing. But if I walked in, I'd be like, this fucking, as you called him, a wet noodle of a man is not going to last very long behind that.
He can't last long. He ain't got enough endurance to fucking eat a bowl of cereal.
He's got about 45 seconds left in him at max. Just walk out, walk down the hall and walk back. He'll be done.
So the next day, we see our main characters at their Urban Legends class. And we get another awesome cameo. The fucking professor, whose name is Wexler, is played by another national treasure, Robert Kruger. Robert Englund, who is known for playing Freddy Krueger. Fuck.
Robert Kruger.
This is going to be a fucking rough episode.
That's good stuff, man. You can't cut that one.
Robert Kruger.
Professor Robert Kruger.
Robert Kruger. He teaches Murdering Kids 101. So fun fact, when I seen this movie in theaters, I was 10. And I had, obviously seen many of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, but I actually had no fucking idea that this was the guy who played Freddy Krueger.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, we didn't have access to the internet at that time, and I didn't watch behind the scenes stuff. I just fucking watched the movie and took it back to the video store, and that was it. But yeah, no clue. But anyway, he's up there professing. Is that what professors do? They profess. And Brenda makes a joke when he then asks her to come up on stage to volunteer for his next lesson. So she cautiously makes her way up, and he offers her a bag of Pop Rocks and a can of Pepsi. This was a big thing. I actually remember this urban legend before seeing this movie.
This whole movie is nothing but a Freddy nightmare. And she's sleeping in class. And this is like her nightmare of all her friends getting killed. And then she gets killed at the end, which she doesn't in the movie, but it's all a Freddy nightmare.
So I seen an interview with Robert Englund where he talked about this, and he actually came up with the costume that Professor Kruger Wexler here wears, the corduroy jacket and the bow tie and all that. He said he kind of, when he found out he was playing a professor, he was like, what would a version of me that's a professor look like? And that's what he came up with. And I thought that was a great pick.
What would he tell the costume designer for the movie? Fuck off, I'm wearing what I want.
No,
I'm fucking Robert Kruger, and I can wear whatever the fuck I want.
He said he called the director and called the costume people, and they were like, sounds good.
Yeah, when you're Robert Englund, you can do that.
Yeah.
You can call up the director and say, hey, this is what I'm fucking wearing. Take it or leave it.
But anyway, she eats the Pop Rocks but refuses the soda. He asks her why, and she explains that the combination of the two will cause your stomach to explode, and that Mikey from the cereal commercials died this way. He then informs her that Mikey is very much alive and working as an ad executive, living a very healthy and normal life. Despite this info, Brenda still refuses to drink the Pepsi. Just then, we see a hand go up in the back belonging to another friend of our main group, goofy frat boy Damon. And Damon has volunteered to eat the candy and drink the soda. He then tosses the Pop Rocks in his mouth, washing it down with a swig of the Pepsi. And everything seems fine at first when all of a sudden Damon grabs Professor Wexler's jacket and liquid begins pouring from his mouth as he doubles over in pain. Damon then falls to the floor and begins choking. The whole class is freaking out as Parker yells for someone to call 911. As Damon takes his last breath, we see a foamy liquid bubble past his lips as he then dies. Everyone then goes silent when suddenly Damon opens his eyes and begins to laugh, revealing it was just a prank and he is fine. As everyone walks out of class, we see a stack of student newspapers being confiscated by campus security officer Reese and the dean. Natalie quickly picks one up, and as she unfolds it, we see that the speech impediment hating bitch Michelle, who was murdered in the opening scene, her big picture right on the front page with an article written by Paul about her murder.
Paul Allen, to be exact.
So I read this article that was supposedly written by Paul, and if that is true, which I highly doubt, Paul is a shitty journalist.
Well, he was a stockbroker just a couple of years before, and decided to switch careers and go back to college and be a journalist.
I think this is his twin brother you're maybe referring to. So this is just a copy and paste statistic report about college students being more likely killed by accident by another student, and how universities are now required by law to report hate crime statistics. Also, crimes against lesbian and gay students went up 14% in 1994 from 1993. It doesn't one fucking time mention Michelle's name, the manner of death, or any suspects.
Wow.
Not a single detail of the incident.
Was this like a newspaper that was in Scream? They just took it. He said, that's really lazy to not even...
Hold on, I'm not done. At the very end, it has this text may be used and shared by anyone in appliance of U.S. copyright law, blah, 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 even electronically, aka you can use it in TV and movies.
Wow. Damn, so they did...
They just copy and paste the college statistic reports.
Doing the show, we pause a lot of stuff like this that's like really quick newspapers or stuff like that, because a lot of times it's really interesting. Like you can get some details or something they don't mention in the movie. Most of the time they take the time to type these things out. For them to just copy and paste some shit on there, like did they not? I mean, it was 1998. You could pause stuff then.
Yeah, I don't think it was as clear as it is now, though.
Yeah, they're like the shitty TVs. They'll never see this.
So Paul gets pissed over the dean confiscating the papers and tries to intervene, but the dean and Reese basically say, "Fuck off, Paul." We then see a news report about the murder where a real reporter explains that the police suspect that the gas station attendant was the killer, and they're currently looking for him. We see the gang sitting talking about the killing when Sasha then says, "Someone told me she was listening to my radio show when it happened. I'm probably the last voice she heard." How the fuck would anybody know that?
That's just something like stupid ass teenagers would come up with.
Who the fuck would even possibly know that that's what she was listening to?
Nobody.
Like a cop told her.
That's when you would say to a stupid teenager, like, well, she died. How the fuck would anybody ever know that?
Oh, but this is where Damon announces that if there is a killer on campus, he doesn't really care because he's going out of town on a snowboarding trip.
Damon is this movie's guy, the goofy ass fucking friend that you can't wait to die. Now, we've had this come up quite a few times in the past couple episodes, or not the past couple, but a few times in the last couple months, and he is that guy. Cannot wait for him to die.
Well, here's the thing here. Why does everyone keep thinking there's a killer on campus? Michelle was killed in like the middle of nowhere on a highway. This didn't happen on campus.
No, and they supposedly, although they're wrong, know who did it, and they're going after this gas station guy. So why would they think anybody was on campus killing people?
I don't know. So Brenda then asks if anyone here knew Michelle. Everyone says no, except for Natalie, who's just staring off into the distance. Brenda then gets her attention where she says, "No, I didn't know her." We then jump to Natalie's room where she sees Tosh on the computer, checking out a site called gothforgoth.com. That's one of the most 90 internet fucking things I've ever heard. Tosh then gets pissed because Natalie exists. It's like, God, could you just not breathe my air? She rushes out of the room and Natalie checks her answering machine. For you younger listeners, this would be like checking your voicemail. So this is where we discovered that not only did Natalie know Michelle, but they were best friends in high school. I don't know why, but I always like laugh my ass off when Damon stops by and he asks Natalie if she wants to come with him to the frat house because Parker is going to pierce Hootie's nose. And Natalie says, Hootie's a dog. And Damon says, well, there's no reason he can't be hip. It's just so fucking stupid and funny. Oh, man. But
I didn't catch the
oh,
the
so
dog.
fucking funny. But Damon realizes that Natalie is upset and asks if she would like to take a drive and talk about it. She agrees and they drive to a wooded area on campus to chat. Damon attempts to get Natalie to hook up with him, which causes Natalie to get pissed. She demands he take her back to the dorm, which he agrees, but he's got to take a piss first. He then gets out of the car and walks 3 miles into the woods to pee.
Yep, once again, a broken horror rule.
We get them both in this movie, too.
Yep. Yeah, you never realize how often that happens in horror until you start a podcast doing horror movies.
That's true.
I'd say out of like, I don't know, almost 50 movies we've covered, probably 9 or 10 of them's had somebody fucking walk 3 miles away to take a fucking piss and die. Like,
It's
why?
been many.
Why would he have not? For one, it's dark outside. Just get out the car and pee. But I mean, if anything, like walk to the giant oak tree that you're next to.
That's what I'd have did.
Why would you go off into the woods?
So while Natalie waits for him to return, she realizes that he has been gone a while. She then gets out of the car to look for him when she is then confronted by the killer who is wearing a large hooded jacket. She then jumps back into the vehicle and locks the door as the killer walks around. She attempts to start the car, but it's an old piece of shit. She finally gets it started when she suddenly starts hearing loud banging noises followed by squeaking sounds coming from the roof. The camera then pans up to reveal the sound is Damon's shoes as only the tips of his toes are touching the roof as he hangs from a tree. The killer then bangs on the windshield, causing Natalie to hit the gas and drive forward. We then see that the rope has been attached to the bumper, which causes Damon to quickly lift into the air, snapping his neck. Once the rope is pulled tight, the car comes to a quick stop. The killer then starts kicking the windshield out, causing Natalie to go into reverse. And as she does this, it lowers Damon's body onto the hood of the car. Now Natalie is face to face with Damon's dead remains, which causes her to say, fuck this, I'm out. Natalie has left the chat.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny when he's hanging there and he's like trying to tell her don't start the car, but she obviously can't hear him because he's got a rope around his neck. And she literally quits trying to start the car and she's just sitting there and the killer has to like almost like boo.
Yeah,
like he looks over the window.
Bang, bang, go.
He's like, yeah, like what do I got to do to get her to start this fucking car up?
So a little later on, we see she has brought the campus security guard Reese to the scene of the crime, which now shows no sign of Damon, the killer, or the car. Reese chalks this up to college students drinking beer, when Natalie then tells her that she thinks it is the same person who killed Michelle. Reese then informs her that that's not possible because the police arrested the gas station attendant earlier this afternoon. So next up, we see Tosh back on the computer, and she has returned to gothforgoth.com. She's looking for her black fingernail angsty king. And we then see that she is chatting with an unknown man about meeting up for some sexy time. She asks him like what he's into and he responds lithium. And she's like, awesome, my kind of guy. Lithium is a major depression or bipolar medication. Like it doesn't get you high. It's not a party drug.
It's a mood stabilizer, I'm pretty sure.
What are you into?
Yeah.
Stabilizing my mood.
Yeah.
My kind of guy.
I feel like she didn't even know. She's like, there's that Nirvana song, Lithium. That's my type of guy.
I feel like the writers didn't bother to like look that up.
They didn't know what lithium was. Yeah, they just knew the song. They're like, it's an actual drug. I hate how they not only they make her so angry, but they make her so promiscuous. I mean, she's
Different dude every night.
Yeah, and the few times she's in it, she's like, I gotta go prep. And then she types to him like, let me go prep real quick. Send me your room number. I'm like,
I think she's the only girl on gothforgoth.com.
and she's
all
probably
dudes.
fucked every dude on gothforgoth.com.
So Tosh tells this guy that she is going to get ready and message her what room he is in. And before he responds, she heads to the bathroom to put her makeup on. It's weird that she's going to go to someone's room to fuck and she hasn't even seen a picture of this person.
That's what I mean. Like,
is that how internet dating was like in the 90s? What if he's like 400 pounds?
Like one of the like guys on gothforgoth.com's like, man, you got to hit her up, tell her you do lithium, and she'll screw you. Like, she doesn't, you don't need to send a picture or anything. She don't care if your wiener's tiny. Just tell her you do lithium. She's all about it.
A few moments later, we see Tosh return, and when she looks at the screen, she sees that this person has claimed he is in her room. Before Tosh can react, she is grabbed from behind and thrown on the bed. The killer then quickly turns the light off and begins strangling her. And while this attack is going on, we see Natalie walk in the door. Now, because of the situation earlier, Natalie doesn't turn on the light because she just thinks that Tosh is having rough goth sex. Natalie then crawls into bed and puts her headphones on and goes to sleep. The next morning, we see her wake up and find a pool of blood next to Tosh's bed. She pulls back the blanket to find a now deceased Tosh with the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" written in blood on the wall.
That's such genius. It's good stuff. Good literary content. Surprised they didn't just put some copyrighted shit like blood smeared on the wall, some like saying, and it's like, yeah. There's I do hate to see Danielle Harris die in anything.
She should have been the main character, man.
She should have. In the whole goth get out everything. She was a very good looking in her goth. The way she is in this movie, like if this girl existed nowadays, she would be one of those girls that's like has an OnlyFans and like ties dudes up and drains their bank account. She would totally be one of.
I could see that.
But yeah, I hate to see her die, but I would have thought she was fucking somebody too.
Yeah, I don't blame Natalie. I get it.
I mean, the dude was like between her legs choking her. I'd have been like, okay, that's semi-normal. So
Natalie then meets with the Dean and Reese about the situation, and Natalie tries to tell them that Tosh was murdered, but considering Tosh was on a depression medication and her wrists were cut, they believe it was a suicide. After the interview, Paul goes to talk to Natalie, where he informs her that he discovered she was best friends with Michelle. She then tells him that she believes that Tosh was murdered by the same person that killed Michelle and Damon. Paul is surprised to hear Damon's name mentioned and informs her that Damon is a big practical joker and he had planned to go on a snowboarding trip with some friends. And he doesn't really buy into the whole urban legend serial killer thing.
Paul Allen is Gale Weathers. They had to have a reporter in this.
Yeah.
As one of the main characters. They had to.
Natalie then says that she believes that the reason this is happening now is because of the anniversary of the Stanley Hall massacre. Paul informs her that the story is just a legend, and they then set out for the records room to see if it really happened. In the records room, they find that the university history book from that year is missing. Paul then asks the janitor if he has any information on Stanley Hall, to which he replies, "Talk to Professor Wexler." I feel like this guy's like the only janitor the school has. Like he's always in the background, like mopping.
I don't know why he says too damn long. Like, why would you say that about doing such an honorable profession?
Yes, honorable profession, as Jigsaw would say.
Yeah.
So they head to Wexler's office, but find he isn't there. Paul then breaks in, where Natalie finds the heavy winter jacket we have seen the killer wear, and an axe in the closet.
You know who else would have did that? Gale Weathers would have broke into that office.
Yeah.
That is 100% a Gale Weathers move.
That is a Gale Weathers move. They then hear Wexler return to the office, where they then hide in the closet. Once they hear Wexler leave, they attempt to sneak out, where they get caught by the professor. Next, we see Paul and Natalie in the dean's office for a meeting. Paul calls out Wexler about the Stanley Hall massacre, where we get some odd looks, I guess you could say. The dean then informs Paul that he has been fired from the school paper and reveals Natalie's previous criminal record for reckless endangerment. Paul looks at Natalie like, what the fuck? Like, we barely know each other and you didn't tell me you had a criminal background.
Yeah, the guy who just broke into the office and got them in trouble.
I mean, why would you expect somebody to tell you that? Like, yeah, I was investigating a murder with you and you didn't tell me you had a criminal background.
we were
It's
doing
been 2 hours, Paul.
illegal stuff and breaking into stuff, and you didn't tell me you had priors. Like, that could have told me that you're bad at getting away with stuff, and I would have never broken into the office.
Yeah, good way to put it.
Did you see Natalie's file? Did you look at that?
No.
It was literally like, I'm not even sure if they put a piece of paper in it. There may have been one piece of paper, and it was just a blank manila folder.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was nothing in the folder. It was just, they just gave him a folder.
I'm sure they did.
I'm like, wow, they really put a lot of work into that.
So after the meeting, Paul blames Natalie for ruining his career. Like, dude, you work at the fucking school paper.
Yeah.
It's not that serious. I'm pretty sure you can still be a journalist without working at the school paper. Like, as long as you have a degree in journalism, you'll probably be all right. He also gets upset with her over not revealing her reckless endangerment charge from high school, to which she tells him to mind his own fucking business. Next, we see Natalie go to talk to her friend Brenda, who is swimming at the university pool. This is kind of hard to explain, but Natalie is she's in a room like overlooking the indoor pool. And it has these big panes of glass. And she notices Brenda down there swimming when suddenly someone walks into the door downstairs by the pool wearing the killer's winter jacket. Natalie starts freaking out, thinking she is about to watch Brenda get killed. She tries to run down there but finds the door locked. She begins screaming for Brenda, but she doesn't hear her. We then see the killer standing at the edge of the pool when suddenly Natalie uses a chair to break the glass, which is very loud and gets everyone's attention. We then see them all look up at her as the killer removes the coat, only to reveal it's not the killer, it's just another member of the swim team. I guess everyone has the same fucking coat.
Yeah. This coat comes up quite often in this movie. And the killer wearing this, like, I hated this whole get up. It's so like a copy off I Know What You Did Last Summer. They're like, instead of a raincoat, we can't use that, so we'll use a winter coat, a hooded winter coat.
Well, the reason they did the winter coat is because the movie was actually supposed to take place in the winter. And that's another reason why they did Toronto when they filmed. But the weather was like really good that year. And they were like, fuck. And they didn't want to they wouldn't have to pay to do fake snow all over the set.
So they did fake rain, though? Like, if it was winter, if it was that cold, it'd been snowing, not raining the whole fucking movie.
Well, it's not winter in the story. It's June in the story. Not winter at all.
It's June. So they initially wanted to do it in winter. And in the story, with it being June, why would it make sense of why the killer would have a fucking
when they
coat?
wrote the story, it wasn't originally in June, but the weather was nice, so they were like, nobody's going to believe that the weather is nice in fucking like Maine.
I feel like they initially started shooting with the idea of the story being in winter, because there's a part where Damon gets in the car whenever him and Natalie get in the car, and he like blows heat into his hand and is like rubbing his hands together. Like they're totally trying to make it like they're both cold as fuck. And that's when he like starts up the car, and I don't know, I thought he like turned the heat on or something, but they very much look like they tried to at least shoot that scene as if it was supposed to be cold outside.
I mean, they may have done that, but basically, once they got up there in pre-production and realized that they actually had to order like all new wardrobe and everything for everybody. Well, not all new, but they changed the wardrobe because everyone's supposed to have coats on. This killer was supposed to be able to blend in a lot better than what we got here, where he's like, well, you know, he's not the only person wearing a coat. Apparently, everybody's got a goddamn coat in this.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What if it was revealed at the end of this movie that this random swim team girl was the killer all along?
That would have been an awful reveal. Absolutely awful.
So after this happens, Brenda, who is starting to see that her friend is beginning to become unhinged, takes Natalie to the locker room for a talk. And this is where we find out about that reckless endangerment charge. So basically, what happened is a few weeks before graduation, Natalie and Michelle were taking a drive when Michelle decides to play an urban legend prank on someone. They spot the car in the opposite lane and turn off their headlights. And when the oncoming car then flashes them to turn on their lights, Michelle spins the car around and begins aggressively following the other car. She then starts flashing her brights like a disco ball, causing the other car to crash. First responders then arrive on scene and inform Michelle and Natalie that the guy who was driving the other car died in the crash. Brenda takes this news pretty well. All she says is, "Wow, how awful for everyone." And then kind of just moves on like her friend didn't just tell her like, "Hey, we killed somebody."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "You need to come to this party."
Well, we know based off the end, she's got to hide her. She's got to hide her true feelings.
She could have had better than that. Though. I was like, "Oh, you want to go to this party later?"
Yeah. They're piercing the dog's nose here. It's gonna be great.
Hootie's got a new Hootie's hip now. He's got a new nose piercing. We gotta go check it out.
We're gonna pierce his ears tonight.
So later on that evening, while Paul cleans out his desk at the school paper office, he finds a newspaper article that claims that a very young Wexler was the only known survivor of the Stanley Hall massacre. And boy, do I got something for you. So, as you guys know, I like to read all the articles and the films, and I gave this one my best shot. But it was a little difficult because we don't see like all the paper. But here's what I gathered from what I could see.
The dangers of piercing your dog's nose.
This one's legit. This one's better. They did a good job here. But it's weird.
But you can't see it?
No,
So it's
I couldn't
harder
see
to
all of
see?
it. I couldn't. No, he's got his hands on it, so I couldn't get.
Mm.
And it's kind of bent in the scene, so I didn't get all the story, but I did get a lot of it. So here we go. So it talks a lot about how school administrators try to keep their students safe, but I mean, this kind of sounds like the other one. They try to keep their students safe, but they can't protect everyone all the time. So I gather that Wexler was some sort of administrator at the time this happened. Then it goes on to tell a story about this guy who was wanted for murder. He was on the run when his car broke down. So he gets the car to a repair shop, and while it is being worked on, the local sheriff shows up and recognizes the killer. The killer then grabs a machine gun and orders the sheriff and everyone against the wall. He then loads all of his weapons into another car and takes the sheriff hostage, where later on he steals another car and lets the sheriff go. He then drives to Stanley Hall, arriving at 10 p.m. on June 16th. This is where it kind of hints that the killer was also a student, I guess. It was hard to put that together. And I guess he starts killing people then. And then the police surround the building, and that's all I could read. And I'm like, this sounds nothing like the urban legend they talked about earlier.
What?
Like nothing.
Who in the fuck did they get to write that? Is it like the fucking director's kid or something? Like high schooler?
I was reading it, and then it was like he grabbed the machine gun and ordered everyone against the wall, and then he kidnapped the shit. And I was like, is this like a Die Hard movie? Like, is this the same Stanley Hall that we're talking about?
They got it confused.
Because in the story, it's like this professor went crazy and took a knife into Stanley Hall and killed everybody. And I'm like, that's not at all what happened.
No, that's pretty bad. I wonder who came up with that. It's got to be like the director's like 14-year-old kid or something.
No, because this is the director's his first ever movie. So he didn't have a kid. He was young. He was like
14-year-old little brother.
Probably.
It's like, you want to get something in a movie? I'll let you write this article that nobody will ever be able to see because TVs are never going to be that good.
I read that and I said, oh, I got to write that down. That's fucking wild. So next up, we see the dean heading home for the weekend when he is approached by Reese. He informs Reese that her concerns about the missing students and Michelle's murder are not warranted and to call him directly if anything happens instead of calling law enforcement. She agrees and heads back inside. The dean then goes to get in his car when suddenly his Achilles tendons are slashed from behind. The dean then falls to the ground in pain and we see the killer crawl from under the car. The dean then attempts to crawl away in fear while the killer releases the parking brake in the car, allowing the vehicle to roll forward. The dean then makes it to the gate of the parking garage but gets run over by the car, causing the tire spikes at the gate to impale and kill him.
Man, you skipped such a great part of Dean Adams pretty much saying he fucked farm animals when he was 18.
Oh,
you missed that?
Was you ever 18? She's like, yeah, not that kind of 18.
She's like, he's like, probably, I don't think he said the word fucking, I don't know, hooking up with a girl or a guy or a farm animal. Were you ever 18? And I'm like, I would have been like, Dean Adams, you fucked farm animals when you were 18? That's really strange.
Well,
you gonna fuck that chicken?
Oh, that'll never get old. We then jump to the party at the frat house where we see a ton of people drinking, dancing, and getting the dog Hootie drunk. Why is that guy dressed like Santa?
I don't know. I don't fucking know.
See, I was like, I don't get it.
I
just don't get it.
It's a frat thing, I guess.
It's June.
It was supposed to be winter. I'm telling you, they shot part of this movie with the idea of it being winter, and then had to change it because it was just not cold enough.
Because that makes no sense. Hey, I'm going to this party in the summer. I should wear my Santa outfit. Oh, maybe it's a college thing. I don't know. We see that Parker and Sasha are here along with Brenda. Natalie then shows up where Brenda offers to get her a drink, and while standing alone, Paul comes up to her and tells her what he found out about Stanley Hall. That there was a machine gun massacre at a repair shop that spilled over into the college somehow.
I never get like how that's an urban legend either. They're trying to figure this out. The janitor throws him a bone and clearly puts the newspaper article in his desk. Because the janitor they initially asked about, he walks up and kind of halfway walks in the room to make sure that he finds it. And we never find out why the janitor did that. But what I don't understand is if you were a journalist, even a student journalist, how you could not find this information out. This is very public information. It was in the fucking newspaper about what happened. How is everybody confused?
Paul's not a good journalist.
No,
that's a thing.
He's not. But it's still, you would think the janitor would be like, oh yeah, I remember what happened.
You're saying the janitor's a better journalist than him? He's like, damn, kid, why can't you figure anything out? I guess I'll get the paper for you.
Did they act like in this story that this whole massacre took place like 100 years ago, and nobody alive like actually remembers when it happened? So now it's kind of turned into an urban legend. Wasn't it like, what was it,
25 years ago?
25 years? Like half of the professors there were there when it happened. Now, it wouldn't be like an urban legend.
I don't know. Let's move on. I can't answer these questions. I didn't write it. They then go upstairs to talk, where Paul then gives her the details of the article and also explain why he thinks Wexler is the killer. Natalie then mentions calling the police, but Paul says he already tried, but then the dean warned the police about possible prank calls this weekend. So Natalie then begins to tear up, mentioning how scared she is, when Paul grabs her stoically and says he isn't going to let anything happen to her.
I am a student journalist. Nothing is going to happen to you. And if it does, I'll write about it and get my non-paying job back.
He looks her into the eyes fiercely and then kisses her softly. Unfortunately, though, this romantic moment is interrupted by Brenda, who, if you remember, has been talking about her crush on Paul the whole movie, and needless to say, she's pissed.
I didn't understand why she got so mad.
Brenda?
Yeah, I don't get this. It seems as if Paul and Brenda are acquaintances, like they know each other's names, but they're not friends. They have no relationship. They have no I would get this more if Brenda and Paul were friends and she really liked him and was trying to advance it to being more than friends, and her friend did this. But it seems as if Paul is like so confused. He's like, what is this about? Like, who is that again?
Well, throughout the whole movie, Brenda, every time Paul's around, she tries to flirt with him, and he has no interest in her.
Yeah, because he doesn't know her.
But she still tries.
Yeah.
And I think she's just like, damn, man, you know that I was going to try until I was graduated.
I was still, yeah, like, you know.
I mean, I kind of see, like, I would, like, tell my best friend, like, hey, you know, could you please possibly move on to somebody else so I can keep trying? I don't disagree with her. I mean, I don't think I would have been that pissed.
If this girl didn't even, like, know you, hardly. Like, she knew your name, but, like, in passing, but that's it. Like, you had tried to talk to this girl, and she just completely, clearly had nothing to do with you, like, barely knew your name, didn't even know your last name. Paul seems so confused. He's like, what the fuck is going on? What was that about? Who is this?
Well, I'll put it like this. Maybe you can understand it this way. If we were at a place and Danielle Harris was there and I just kept trying, and then I walked in and you're making out with her, I'd be pretty pissed. I'd be like, oh, come on, man. I was going to try till I died. I was never going to stop.
Look, we both really like Danielle Harris, so that's what I'm saying. Like, you can't, it's not whoever said I liked her first has, like, future full dibs. You have full rights to it. You have, nothing can ever break that.
I would be crushed. I would be crushed.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. It's Danielle Harris. If I went to a convention and her husband was there kissing her, I would be like, oh God, if I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, I don't want to know about her husband. We then jump to Reese, who is somewhere inside one of those main buildings where we see that the power is out from the big storm that has rolled into the campus. I love this part because she runs into the creepy janitor and she says, like, are you trying to give me a heart attack? And he just responds, boo. He just keeps going.
He's working that honorable profession, man. He doesn't have time for humor. It's like such a good dry humor.
Yeah.
Just like, boo.
Because he never even acknowledges her except for saying boo and just keeps going. So while looking around, she finds Professor Wexler's office door open and decides to check it out. And while inside, she finds that it is trashed and looks like someone raided it. And while investigating the burglary, Reese slips and falls into a big-ass pool of blood. Back at the party, Paul tries to convince Parker, aka the Wish version of Stu Macher, to shut the party down because Natalie was right about there being a killer on campus. Parker makes a big joke out of this and basically tells Paul to fuck off and kind of accuses him of making this whole thing up to help his career. Paul then tells Natalie he is leaving to go get some help and to stay at the party, and we also see that Sasha is leaving to go start her shift at the radio station. Parker then receives a call from Ghostface that informs him that he is going to die tonight. It's a very Ghostface call.
It is.
Even a voice changer.
It's in the house too. It's like coming from in, like,
the phone should have said Ghostface instead of Damon.
they make the joke like this is, or they make it wasn't a joke. They comment in the movie about how this is the urban legend of the babysitter. But that's what Scream is about. Like,
oh,
I mean, Jesus Christ. You know, I wouldn't have been surprised if the movie would have got to the end and the killer was revealed as Stu and Billy.
That would have been great.
They just hired both of them, and it would have just been them.
So of course he doesn't take this seriously. The killer then tells him about the urban legend of the old lady who put her dog in the microwave. Parker immediately changes his tune and rushes down to the kitchen where he hears the microwave ding. He then cautiously opens the door to find the killer has microwaved Parker's dog Hootie, and he basically exploded in there. So now we got our really far away pee, and we got our dead dog. We got two of them.
You know what's unfortunate? That the dog kill is the best gore we get in this entire movie. It's
This
like
is
the
true.
only like gory shit other than fake blood that we get in the entirety of this movie.
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to put all our gore into making an exploded microwave dog.
It looks good.
It does look like they maybe had went and gotten some fake blood and hamburger meat and just
there's some
covered
fur.
the inside.
There's
Yeah,
some
and
fur in there.
some fur. Yeah, man, the killer didn't have to take the dog. You could have just told them that. You were just trying to lure him back in there. You
No,
didn't have to
'cause
microwave his
just
dog.
needs him to go to the bathroom where the killer's waiting.
Well, the killer, I'm sure, wasn't like, oh, he's going to see this and he's going to throw up and I'm going to
It's
be
a
here
movie.
waiting.
It's just a movie.
I think the killer was just hiding in the bathroom.
So the sight of this makes Parker sick, where he then rushes to the bathroom to puke. And as he is throwing up in the toilet, the killer comes up behind him, slamming his head on the bowl and knocking him unconscious. Parker then wakes up sometime later tied to the toilet. The killer then rams a long metal funnel down his throat, pouring a pack of pop rocks and bleach into his stomach. We then see Parker begin to convulse as bluish white foam and blood pours from his mouth, killing him.
Was it bleach?
Yeah.
I don't know why I put in here it was Drano.
So I didn't see what exactly the bottle that the killer was holding, but when it gets sat down on the sink, it says bleach. But I think they fucked it up because I think it's two different bottles.
Yeah,
I feel like I've seen something that said Drano too.
I looked really close on the first one. I thought it said Drano. I mean, shit, they may have fucked that up. That wouldn't be the only thing they fucked up this movie. But yeah, I don't get the pop rocks though. I don't think that was needed. I'm pretty sure
it wasn't. It was just the urban legend part of it.
Yeah, don't eat pop rocks and bleach together. You know that'll blow you up.
Do you remember having those same metal funnels in the Army?
No.
You don't? Where you used to put the big trucks, they would get the metal funnel and you'd pour it instead of like spilling it all over trying to get it in the big truck tank. I don't know. Well, yeah. I guess if you didn't have them, but we had them and everyone called them donkey dicks. Just a big old fucking, it's a big metal funnel with a huge fucking, a big old dick off the end of it.
I remember there being a funnel. I don't think I ever handled one, but I definitely do remember them talking about donkey dicks.
Yeah, donkey dick is the funnel.
I actually remember being new and being like, what the fuck is a donkey dick?
And I'm pretty sure that's Army-wide, because when I went to Iraq and we were working with some people I didn't even know in a complete separate unit, they were like, hey, do you guys got a donkey dick? And I was like, no.
Yeah, we obviously had them because I've definitely heard that term. I just never handled one, so I don't.
There's only typically one for every 300 people floating around. They don't last long.
Yeah, everybody scoops those donkey dicks up. Gotta get them while they're hot.
So next we jump on over to the radio studio where Sasha is taking calls from listeners. And while she is talking to this couple that have somehow gotten stuck together while having kinky sex, I don't even think that's possible.
It's possible for dogs. We know that.
I know that. And I'm like, I don't think that's not possible with people. Yeah, but while she is on the phone, we see the killer come up from behind and kill the engineer. Sasha doesn't notice this happen, but soon after, the lights in the studio shut off. Sasha gets up to see what is going on, where she then comes face to face with the killer. The killer then smashes the glass with an axe, causing Sasha to freak out and run off. Back at the party, we see Natalie sitting on the couch listening to Sasha's show, when she then hears Sasha's screams over the speakers. She then jumps up and decides to run from the party to help her friend. The killer then begins chasing Sasha through the building. She attempts to run down the stairs to escape the building, but gets thrown off of the landing by the killer, causing her to injure her ankle. Using the elevator, she makes her way back to the studio, where she hides in a random room. While Reese is driving around campus, she hears Sasha's cries for help on the radio and does a U-turn heading back to help. From the top floor room, Sasha sees Natalie enter the building and begins screaming for her help. The killer then enters the room as Sasha pleads for her life and then brutally murders her with the axe.
I wouldn't say brutally. We don't know. That's allegedly. We didn't get to see
that axe went back pretty far and swung pretty hard, so I'm pretty sure it was pretty brutal.
No blood splatter though. It's a shame that we didn't get more of Sasha in this movie. I didn't care for her character and how it was written, but I do like Tara Reid in this. This is prime Tara Reid.
It is prime Tara Reid, I agree.
That BDSM spiked collar she's wearing is pretty hot. I don't know why they put that on her in this movie.
Because that was like the thing back then.
I remember chokers being a thing and stuff, but she has a full-on spiked collar, like that you would.
Well, she gets the Kama Sutra. There's a deleted scene of her and Parker fucking, and Parker's like not even that into it, and she's trying to do these weird positions, and Parker's like more concerned with his dog who's watching, and she wants the dog out of the room, and he doesn't. It's fucking weird.
Yeah, I could see why they deleted that scene.
Yeah.
I would want the dog out of the room as well.
So after the killer kills Sasha, he then looks down at Natalie and gives her a friendly wave before disappearing. Natalie then runs to Paul's room where she finds him just arriving home. She tells him about Sasha, where he informs her that the phones are out from the storm. This is where Natalie then starts suspecting Paul is the killer. She asked him where he has been, to which he informs her that he has been all over campus looking for help.
And this is the part actually where Sydney begins thinking Billy might be the killer.
No, if you do Scream 2 rules, this is where she thinks her goody two-shoes boyfriend is the killer.
I did Scream 1 rules, and it is very similar to when she starts thinking that Billy might be the killer. I mean,
who'd you call from the police department?
Hold on, you're missing from Scream 1. He does the exact same Billy, I'm on your side, and touches her face.
Oh,
I mean, it's literally like they watched the movie and copied the exact same mannerisms.
Like they just gave the cast Scream and they were like, watch this.
Yeah, I mean, it is like dead on, like the whole like I'm on your side, which that same line was used, and then he like caresses her face as he's saying it, and I'm like, man. This is copying at this point. This isn't like inspired by. This is like copy. I'm surprised I didn't get sued for this movie.
So one thing about this movie though is where the fuck is everybody? Like this would make more sense if it was like Christmas break or spring break or something, because there's like nobody at this big ass college. Like she runs to Paul's room and is like beating on Paul's door. And Paul comes around the corner. There's literally nobody else in his whole entire dorm.
It's winter break.
There's nobody that comes out and's like, do you need something? Are you okay?
Yeah.
Like they literally could have went.
They're all at the party.
And gathered like everybody from that floor and like, we have to hide out until the police come. We're safer with 80 of us in one room. And then, problem solved.
Yeah. There's a lot about this movie.
But there's nobody here. Sense. It's weird.
I don't even remember how Sasha got in the radio station.
What do you? She got that ride from that friend. She leaves the party, gets in the friend.
But I thought she was going to. Why would she go to the gas station or the radio station?
Because she's the radio DJ, and it was her time to be the DJ. It was her job.
Nobody's there. Like she's literally about to do a show. The lights are off. Nobody's there. She's gonna run the studio herself.
She was doing the fucking phone with the couple that got stuck fucking. So obviously somebody's calling in. Like somebody's listening.
And then she runs upstairs. Or she takes the elevator back up to the top floor. Like if somebody's chasing you, trying to kill you, don't go up. Like, don't go to the top floor of a building you can't escape from.
That choker was cutting off oxygen to her brain.
Yeah, there's just so much about this movie that's very
questionable.
Very, very confusing, yes.
Paul then has the best idea of the whole movie. He decides that he and Natalie are just going to get in his car and leave. They then rush outside towards the parking lot where they run into Brenda, who is also freaking out. The three jump into Paul's SUV and leave the campus. On their way out, Brenda tells Paul to stop at the next gas station to see if the phones are working. Paul agrees and pulls into the parking lot. Paul runs inside to talk to the clerk while Brenda and Natalie stay in the car.
He crop dusted him.
Brenda then apologizes to Natalie about earlier and tells her that she hopes her and Paul make a good couple. They also notice that there is a bad smell in Paul's car. While that wasn't my fault. You fucked me up on that sentence.
He literally they talk about in the car. She's like, does something stink? And he's immediately like, no.
I don't smell anything.
Totally the guy who just let out a silent fart and is embarrassed. And they're like, do you smell? Nope. I don't smell anything. Doesn't smell like anything in here. And then they're like, they mention it like 2 more times, and he gets out of the car, and I'm like, did he just crop dust them?
He looks at Natalie like, those who smelt it dealt it. It's you.
He's like, I got to get out of this car before I shit myself.
But while reconciling their friendship, they start to hear a watch alarm coming from the trunk of the SUV. They both get out and open the back door, only to discover Professor Wexler's dead body. The 2 girls look in Paul's direction and see he is still inside talking to the clerk, and decide to run off into the woods across from the gas station. Paul begins chasing after them while yelling Natalie's name. He doesn't give a fuck about Brenda. He only yells Natalie. Maybe he doesn't know Brenda's name. Natalie and Natalie's friend. Where are you going?
I'm telling you, he doesn't know her name. That's why I thought her getting so mad was so weird, because I'm like, he almost looks like he doesn't know who she is when she gets mad. He's like, well, who the fuck was that? What was that about? Yeah, I'm telling you, he doesn't know her name.
Brenda trips and gets left by Natalie, who is running back towards campus. While she stops to look for her, she then hears Brenda scream in the distance. Natalie, I found your friend. Natalie makes it to the road where the creepy janitor just happens to be driving by. What fucking time does this dude get off work?
He doesn't. But it's an honorable profession.
Like 11 o'clock.
He works 24 hours. He's on salary, like $30,000.
So he lets her in and drives off. Natalie then notices the most popular coat in the tri-state area is behind his seat, and immediately begins to start suspecting he is the killer. Natalie goes through like the whole fucking college thinking they're the killer.
Yeah. And then immediately like goes from trying to get the fuck out to immediately sees another car without their headlights and just immediately changes her mind.
The car's the killer.
Yeah.
She literally went from Wexler to Paul to the janitor. Who else? I don't know. I feel like there's somebody I'm missing.
I don't know, but she will leave anybody behind too.
Oh.
Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but Natalie is all about Natalie. She didn't give a fuck. Like, she left Brenda behind. She leaves this fucking...
She runs for 5 minutes before she turns to look for Brenda. I feel like she was just like, Brenda. Oh, she didn't say anything.
I think she's seen Brenda fall and was like, well, better her than me. She's mad at me anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But she demands to be let out of the truck, which aggravates the janitor, which I don't blame him for being a little aggravated. Like, he just works like a fucking 22-hour long day. His boss, the dean, is a dick. The security guard is a bitch to him. And now he has to deal with this shit.
Yeah. He's like, don't you break my fucking door handle.
Yeah, she's trying to jump out of the truck while he's driving, and he's just like, what's wrong with you? Natalie then notices Paul's SUV in the oncoming lane with the headlights off, which Natalie recognizes immediately that this is the gang initiation legend, which of course she should, because that's how she killed a guy a year ago. The janitor then flashes his lights at the SUV, which causes Natalie to start freaking out, and I just had a fucking light bulb. I know what you did last summer. They killed a guy a year before, and the next year they're paying for it.
Yeah, I have that whole comparison in my final notes. They totally stole that entire thing from I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Which is funny because this director wanted to direct that movie, but got stuck with this one.
And not only they did that, but the killer is like, yeah, I mean, it's like they took 90% of Scream and 10% of I Know What You Did Last Summer and fucking shot a movie.
And then, no, they took like 2% from The Thing because the jacket is the same one that McCready wears.
Yeah, but I think that was more so trying to steal from I Know What You Did Last Summer. But it is the jacket. Speaking of the jacket, the janitor's probably like, when that car passes, I'm like, hey, that guy's got my jacket.
The janitor then flashes his lights at the SUV, which causes Natalie to start freaking out. Paul's car then does a U-turn and begins chasing them while flashing the lights. The killer then pulls up beside the truck and runs them off the road, causing them to crash in a ditch. Natalie then escapes the wrecked vehicle and makes her way back towards campus, where she comes across Stanley Hall. She then hits the emergency button thingy, trying to get a hold of Reese, when suddenly she starts hearing screams coming from the top floor of the abandoned frat house. Natalie then makes her way inside where she hears someone screaming, "Help me." She climbs to the top floor where she finds Timu Stumacher's body in the closet. I have no idea why he's covered in foam. He looks like he took a bubble bath.
I don't know.
He's literally covered in foam. And I'm
Maybe
like, why?
maybe all that bleach and pop rock. I guess that's
Created
what it
that
was
much
supposed to
foam?
be. I guess it maybe blew his stomach up and just kept foaming. I don't know.
Well,
That's the only thing that makes
it's a
sense.
lot
I
of
don't
foam.
know.
It's like a fucking, he came from one of those foam rave parties. Oh, she then comes across the dead body of the dean on the bed, which causes her to freak out and run out of the room. And when she opens the door, she runs into Damon's dead body hanging in the doorway. This little scene right here is kind of a little bit of a Jason. Like, take your kills, set them up cool to scare the final girl. It's a Jason move.
Yeah, and the killer would have had a hard time doing all this, especially this quick. A lot of the stuff in the movie, if you look back, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, but I don't care about that.
I do get, the whole leaving the bodies around is a very Jason-esque.
Every time we talk about this, I got the scene in my head where that girl trips that
What the
body
fuck?
early and Jason just pops from behind the tree like, shit. I wasn't ready yet. She then walks into another room and finds candles everywhere. It's very romantic and an unconscious Brenda tied to the bed. Natalie then sulks on the bed, believing she didn't make it in time to save her friend. Why the fuck didn't she check to see if she's still alive? She just seen her and was like, oh, she's dead.
Because she doesn't care.
Like, bro, she's just knocked out.
She only came up here so she could leave her again.
Maybe she could be saved. Maybe she needs medical attention. Like, you just gave up on her just by sight. She didn't even have any wounds.
Natalie's awful. She's awful.
A shitty person.
Like, Danielle Harris should have played this part. It would have been better, but the character was written as an awful person.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I said I don't care for the final girl in this movie, because most final girls are at least somewhat likable. And other than Jamie Lee Curtis, she's not likable. Not likable at all. But yeah, she's like completely not likable.
She didn't even tell Paul about her criminal record.
She literally took part in killing a guy. She leaves all her friends at some point in this movie while this killer's trying to get her. Like, she
accuses everyone of being the killer.
She's like gonna fuck one of her best friends, like, crushes. That apparently is a thing. Apparently those two are something more than just acquaintances. Yeah, she's just awful throughout this whole movie. She's a bad person.
Well, while Natalie is grieving the death of her friend, we see Brenda rise up behind her and knock her out. Natalie then wakes up to find Brenda in the killer's coat. Brenda then sets up a whole slideshow presentation on why she is doing this. So it turns out that the guy Michelle and Natalie killed back in high school was Brenda's husband-to-be. After many failed attempts at therapy to get over her boyfriend's death, she decided that her next step would be to kill a bunch of people and frame Professor Wexler for the murders. That's a big leap. She tells Natalie that her final urban legend kill will be the black market kidney story, where she removes Natalie's organs and then leaves her to bleed out.
Man, her fiance really dodged a bullet when he died in that car wreck.
It could have been,
to say it. She would have been a crazy ass wife to be married to. Like, she has lost her shit. Imagine trying to divorce this woman.
You wouldn't. You would just die.
Yeah, she's the girl that you're like watching Dateline, and you're watching the story about the wife who slowly like tortured and killed her husband over years with poison.
They would just find you dead, covered in foam.
Yeah, she's awful. And I feel like when she's going off, she is playing like post-reveal Stu Macher. Like, how he's like just very eccentric and crazy and like so happy about being crazy.
I love her in this scene. I think she does a phenomenal job at playing crazy.
I imagine you really like Stu Macher.
I do.
Yeah.
Favorite person from Scream.
Yeah. Well, she took his everything, mannerisms and everything.
Fucking like it. I'm here for it. She then starts to cut Natalie's abdomen open when suddenly Reese comes through the door with her gun drawn. She then orders Brenda against the wall and begins patting her down for weapons when Brenda quickly spins around, slicing Reese's stomach open. Reese's gun goes sliding across the floor, allowing Brenda to pick it up and shoot Reese, regaining control of the situation. By this point, Natalie has managed to get herself untied, but is now being held by gunpoint by Brenda. Brenda then announces her plan to kill Natalie, frame Wexler, and use the situation to get Paul to date her / finally know her name. And right before she pulls the trigger, Paul comes walking around the corner clapping, saying how impressed he is with Brenda's plan. He then attempts to stroke Brenda's ego a little bit here, saying how she could give him specific info about the murders that he could write about. He then asks her just to hand over the gun, but Brenda's a boss bitch and she doesn't fall for it. I just want to say here, I think crazy hair Brenda is really hot.
She is hot.
She is very attractive here. And I also just had another light bulb. So in Scream 2, when the killer goes to kill Sydney, doesn't Gail Weathers like interrupt it?
Yes, I have that in my notes. She does the whole wake up, shoot, and pass out again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a total like Gail Weathers thing to do.
So Brenda goes to shoot Natalie, but drops the gun after being shot by Reese, who is hiding a little baby gun, possibly in her cleavage. She shoots her and then says "Mo," and then just quickly dies again.
That's like a Gail Weathers.
No, the
thing
best
to
parts
do.
though is when she just dies.
Yeah,
she
just right back out.
She just falls down completely dead again. Natalie then picks up the gun and Brenda starts fake crying before attempting to leap towards her. But Natalie's about that business. She's no chump, and she shoots Brenda, causing her to fall out the window. Paul consoles her for a moment before Reese interrupts this by trying to breathe. Paul and Natalie then rush off to get some help. Why didn't one of them stay with Reese? Why did both of them leave? If I was Reese, I'd be like, no. Like, why don't you stay here with me? Because, you know, what if I need, like, what if I'm bleeding to death and need somebody to put pressure on it or something?
Because Natalie's a fucking bitch, and she convinced Paul. Let's just leave her. Fuck her. We'll just leave her here.
Yeah.
I've left everybody this movie.
This is
I even
true.
left you at one point. Let's just go. She'll be fine.
We then see Paul and Natalie riding in his car where she starts telling him that this whole story will one day be told as an urban legend on campuses everywhere. And I said, I doubt it because of this little thing called the internet will blow up and you'll be able to look up any fucking crime that has ever happened. I wonder if Wexler's body is still in their backseat. We never see him not in there.
I would imagine he is, unless like Paul.
They're just driving, like laughing, talking about how this is going to be an urban legend. They got a dead guy in the back.
It had unless Paul took the body out after this because Brenda drove the car there.
Yeah. And
she didn't take the body out.
She even says, she's like, and I got something down there that's going to like clear me of all this or whatever.
Yeah.
Wexler's body's still in the...
A fart still sitting in that car.
But anyway, they are talking and just having a nice time when suddenly Brenda pops up from the back seat with an axe. She attempts to chop off Paul's head, but he ducks just in time. Her and Natalie then begin to fight in the back seat, causing Paul to swerve around before finally slamming into the side of a bridge, causing Brenda to be ejected out of the windshield and down into the rushing water of the river below. We then jump to another college sometime later, where we see another group of students telling the story of the urban legend murders. The guy telling it, he's got to be like 30 years old. He's got fucking age lines in his face.
He's a professor.
He is
trying
not
to be
a fucking
hip.
college student. But after he finishes, the whole group just kind of laughs at him when the camera then pans over to Brenda, who now looks a little different, and she leans in and says, "Listen up, guys. This is how the story really goes." Is she about to tell the same story that the other guy just told? Like, if I was there, I'd be like, wait. Can you just tell us the things he got wrong? Like, I don't really want to sit here for 2 more hours and hear the same story.
Yeah.
I know he just told you that for 2 hours, but let me tell you the real story. No.
It's like two details are different.
Like, just tell me. Apparently, they actually do mention in the sequel that the details are different because Brenda actually gets away with killing everybody. The actual ending with Natalie and Paul living happily ever after never actually happens. This is just a version that this guy tells. This is the legend of it now. But and I haven't seen the second one, or maybe I've seen parts. I feel like I've seen it, but I don't remember really. But she does have a cameo in it or whatever. But yeah, the actual story is like she got away with it. Like they never found out who did all these killings.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, that's the end of the movie. Forgot to say that.
I didn't think about that, which would explain why some of the kills are not possible. They're kind of something that she couldn't have done, and it's because it's the urban legend version of the story that he's telling. Yeah.
Which I think is a really great way
that
to
was
tie
a great
this up.
idea for a sequel.
Yeah.
They don't really explain that in this movie. That's not really a thing in this movie, but the fact that they went back in the second one and explained that none of that shit at the end actually did happen, because I was like, I rewound it. I'm like, she literally got shot and fell out of a
Like
window
3
stories to the concrete. How in the fuck is she in the back of this car right now? And then falls again off the bridge into the water, and then is apparently just fine.
I do want to bring up a really cool special effects thing that I found out. I find it fascinating. You might not, but so Stanley Hall, the building that was Stanley Hall, and then the building that was the frat house at the party, right? So those were not filmed at the University of Toronto like 90% of the movie was. They had to find some abandoned buildings that they could film in, and they came across these two big ass buildings that were due to be destroyed right next to each other. And they got permission to film there, but the problem was that they're in Canada, and at that time, like the summertime, they don't have a lot of darkness. I talked about that when I was in Alaska. You get very little darkness in the summer. So they were like, how are we going to film this without like it being daylight shining through the windows? So they came up with a phenomenal idea. They built a fucking soundstage around both these houses, which stretched half of a block, and they tarped it. So it was completely dark in there. And then they mounted like lights and stuff to make lightning on there so they could basically control what this shit looked like inside.
Well,
So it was completely daylight, basically a 2-block long fucking 5-story soundstage was built around these two buildings just for this.
yeah, that's
Yeah, if you can
that's
actually
like
see
the
it.
opposite of what they normally do. They normally build houses in a soundstage, not a soundstage around houses.
Yeah, I really recommend checking out the special features because you see it. It looks like the like the Hell in the Cell from wrestling. That's what
Yeah.
it looks like. It's fucking cool. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Big props to them.
I have to look that up.
All right, so my girl Sarah Michelle Gellar got and accepted the role of Sasha. She was going to be Sasha. So that'd have been 3 people from Scream 2 in this movie. But the last minute, she had to back out due to scheduling conflicts with Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Man, I like Tara Reid in this.
Give me
I don't
Sarah
know
Michelle
about
Gellar all
that.
day. So the Latin motto of the university, which is featured on its emblem in some of the scenes, translates as "the best friend did it." So if you speak Latin, the movie's ruined.
Yeah, that would suck if you do speak Latin and it ruined the whole entire movie for you.
As this film was created in the wake of Scream's major success and reviving the slasher genre, several characters in the film are known to be blatant ripoffs of Scream. Reese is supposed to be Dewey, Natalie is of course Sydney, Paul is Gail Weathers, Parker is Stu Macher, and Sasha is Tatum Riley, and Brenda is Billy.
Of course.
Yeah, this was kind of really on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very obvious. They definitely don't cover it up very well.
All right, so ratings and kill count. We got a total kills 10. We have Michelle Mancini, who was killed with the axe. We have Damon, who was hung by the neck. Tosh, who was strangled / had a wrist cut. You have the guy who was supposed to marry Brenda. He died by Michelle and Natalie. Dean Adams, who was impaled on the spike strips. You have Parker, who was forced to ingest the pop rocks and Drano bleach stuff. Sasha's technician, who was killed in the background. We couldn't really see how she got killed. Sasha, who was killed with the axe. Professor Wexler, who was found killed in the trunk. We don't know how he died. And weird janitor guy who died in the car accident. So favorite kill. I go first this time, and I went with Parker. It's one of the few kills we see.
It's bad. It's bad when that's your reason. Some of the bleach / Drano and pop rocks for some reason. You didn't even do a second, did you?
I did. I just wrote down Tosh because I was like, I like how they kind of did the Chekhov's gun where they had the incident happen before where it makes sense why she doesn't cut the light on and she puts her headphones on. That was my second.
Yeah, I was like, who's Tosh? Forgot. That's considered her goth Danielle Harris.
Goth Danielle Harris, yeah. And because I like Danielle Harris so much.
Man, ever since you told me about the sequel, all I can picture now is Natalie at the end, and they pan the camera over, and she's like, looks like Stephen Hawking in a chair, like completely broke her back on the fall.
All right. What's your kill?
I went with, here, let me read why I went with this, because I can't fucking remember. There was so many underwhelming kills in this movie. There was nothing that really, really stood out to me. I went with Damon because I fucking hated him. That was my reasoning.
Okay.
I thought that tying his neck to the rope was cool. That was one of the urban legends I actually had that I was really familiar with. I really wish that when that car took off and it ran out of rope, it would have decapitated him. We'd have got some cool effects, but it didn't. With my close second being farm animal fucker Dean Adams getting pinned between the car and tire spikes. We did get to see that at least.
I watched the special features of that, and like 3 people had to help him get on the ground to get set up for the scene. I was like, damn. He must be fucking in bad shape.
Yeah.
They asked the director, they were like, well, was he at least a good sport about it? And they were like, well,
no.
Yeah, he was great, but at the end of the day, you could tell he was done with it.
Yeah.
Typical old guy.
Yeah. That makes sense why his old ass didn't roll out the way, because it seems like when you're watching the car slowly go at him, you're like, why would you keep crawling? Why wouldn't you just roll out of the way of the car?
All right, so rating. I gave this movie a 3.6. It's a nostalgia movie for me. I still like it. I own it. And I will watch it many more times. I really do like the movie. My only downside about it is not get to seeing the kills very well.
The only?
Yep, that's it.
I'm
fine with everything else. Perfectly fine with it. I have fun when I watch this movie, and that's my main concern.
Well, that's the only thing I like about it. It's a fun movie and nostalgia.
It's purposes. A 90s slasher. I love the idea of the urban legend kills. A lot of them were urban legends that I remember from when I was younger, and they included them, and I really like it. And I like the cast. They have a good cast. I like, everybody in it. So, and it has great fucking, like, cameos, man. Yeah, I like it.
Well, I gave this a 3.1, with all 3.1 coming from much.
That's a bullshit rating, and
Pretty much nostalgia purposes. Look, I think it's a fun movie. I do. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie to put on when you want to watch a fun movie, especially if you're a fan of the 90s. It's definitely a late 90s teen slasher, which most of those are fun. I love the cast. It's star-studded cast for that time. A lot of really big stars, a lot of bangers in the cast, a shit ton of horror icons in this. I thought the pacing was good.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I came up with to say I liked the pacing.
I don't think you've ever mentioned the pacing, but maybe one time you mentioned the pacing.
In movies? What are you
Out
talking
of
about
like
in older episodes?
all the fucking episodes we've done, I feel like you've not mentioned the pacing very often.
I've done pacing quite a few times in my notes, actually.
Those of you with some free time, go through all our episodes and find out how many times he's mentioned pacing.
All right. Well, all right. For those who listen, like the Ted Bowes and the Mr. Christopher Hansen that we know have listened to most, if not all, the episodes, they'll be able to tell you I've mentioned pacing before. Not every episode, but I'd say at least 1 in 5 I mention pacing. Normally when the pacing stands out to me, like it's really not, it's not a slow burn, it's not too quick. But this one, I was really reaching at straws here to say what I really liked about it. Because overall, man, the things I do like the most about it is just the nostalgia feel to it. I thought some of the kills were really creative, although I hate that we don't get to see them. We don't get much gore or practical effects. You know, as I explained earlier, I've always thought of this movie as the urban legend kills being a really like cool original idea. But watching this back, it kind of just clicked to me that they were just kind of trying to capitalize off the way Scream uses horror movie tropes. They wanted to do that, but they couldn't use horror movies, so they came up with urban legends. I wasn't a big fan of Natalie as a final girl.
No.
We talked about that already.
I like the actress.
Yeah, I do too.
She was really great the other night in Longlegs. Fantastic. Yeah. It's not really like a acting issue.
No. It was the way it was written. She was written as a very dull character and not a very likable character. She does a lot of things that I don't like in this movie.
I like Brenda way more than I like her.
I'm kind of like, Natalie should probably die. She shouldn't make it. She shouldn't be the final.
Well, we know that she actually does die.
Well, thank God.
This is just a different version that we got here.
I wasn't a big fan of the killer either. Just I feel like the look.
Oh man, I liked.
I feel like the look, like, you know, we get horror movies. We get the Freddys and the Jasons, or like we talked about it during My Bloody Valentine. Like that's a scary fucking killer. If I ran into a chick wearing this fucking winter jacket, I wouldn't be all that terrified. You can find that actually in the wintertime. You can go outside and find many of these killers walking around. But overall, you know, despite the unoriginal ideas of this movie, it is a really fun one. And if you're a fan of the 90s slashers and that whole time period, you'll probably enjoy at least that aspect of it.
Would you in the future be interested in doing the sequel?
Yeah. I mean,
I can't remember the sequel. I'd like to cover it eventually.
Yeah, I didn't dislike the movie. I mean, 3.1, that's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but I mean, that's how I feel about this movie. It's not a super great. I would have enjoyed this movie a lot more had they not blatantly ripped the characters off of Scream so much. Like the idea and the tropes and stuff is all right. If we would have gotten original characters with actual, like, they would have showed some of the kills and we'd have got some practical effects, I think that could have boosted this movie up a whole lot more.
Yeah, I agree. Well, once again, we thank you guys for listening. Please give us a follow or like if you enjoy the show. Check out the website. Check out the socials. Tell a friend, a family member, or your crazy best friend that's murdering everyone about the show. We hope to see you next time. Any last words?
Aren't you glad you didn't turn the lights on?
Don't put your dog in the microwave.